everyone, welcome back to Houseplants Gone Wild. My name is Kelly. Today I wanted to kind of do a quick video on some propagations. I've had previous luck with certain methods, mostly water propagating. So I wanted to kind of go over that. I started this morning with propagating quite a few of my plants, and then I realized I should probably make a video about this. So I wanted to go over mostly some of the easy sort of propagation methods, usually just by cuttings. There is also root division, which I'll see if I can throw that in this video. And most of them are just plants that shoot out their aerial roots. Like I have a lot of Pothos, I have some Philodendron and some Monstera that I'll be propagating today, as well as a Ficus Lyrata. I wanted to go over the rubber tree propagation. I've heard in the past that some people have had no luck with water propagating their Ficus Lyratas or their rubber trees in water. I've heard people say you have to use sort of, I think it's called stemming, where you put sphagnum moss around the trunk or the branch, and you wrap it with some plastic wrap or something to keep that moisture in the wet or the damp sphagnum moss. I've never tried that, and I'm not sure if I will, but usually what I do is I usually will do cuttings and then let them root in water for a good long while. On my website, houseplantsgonewild.com, I do cover propagation methods. I do talk about how I water propagate most of my plants. I have used a growing medium. I've used coco coir. That's pretty much the only one that I use when I'm, other than soil and water, I'll use coco coir just to sort of lay more delicate plants on the surface and let them shoot their roots into the coco coir, and then just delicately transplant them into their growing mediums and their pots. Hope you enjoy. Feel free to give me a thumbs up. Thanks again for watching my videos. It's been a great help. I'd love to hear from everyone, seeing what everyone wants to see, hearing what you have, or any success or non-successful propagation methods you may have had in the past. So as you can see here, I did quite a few cuttings this morning already, but I kind of wanted to just show you and go over some of the ones that I have already taken. So we'll start with this little pile here. So the first one was the Pothos Enjoy. So they have sort of these white splashes, smaller leaves, but as you can see, they all have little roots, these little nubs that they put out, and those will eventually root. For most of these plants, they all have some aerial roots that they are putting out, or these little sort of bumps, and that's where your roots will come out in water. All of these I'm going to water propagate behind me. I'll show that later in the video, where I have little vials of water that I have suspended in the window where they get bright light but not direct sunlight, and I can just sort of monitor the water levels with the clear glass. And the other thing that I've heard with the Pothos is when you cut them, they release sort of their own rooting hormone. So I've had great luck. I've never had issues propagating Pothos in water. Soil I've put them in directly in soil, which you can do. But for myself, I've found that it took a lot longer, and I did end up losing, out of probably the 15 cuttings I put in a 6-inch pot, I probably lost, I think, 3 of them, where I've never had that happen with water propagating. But when you do transition from water into soil, it can take a little bit more attention, because you have to make sure for the first couple weeks that the soil is not fully drying out, just to make that transition from water to soil a little bit easier. The next one is a marble Pothos. A little bit of dirt on the leaves here. But they have sort of white cream colored veins that go through them. Sort of, I would say, a mix between the golden Pothos and the Enjoy. The Enjoy has more of a cream and a white, not quite like a Mandula pothos, which I'll show later. But once again, they'll have little sort of nubs and aerial roots. So these ones here, these are all golden pothos, quite a few. I have quite a few around the house, but they're nice cabinet plants, the ones that don't need a whole lot of light. You can just put on top of a shelf, let them hang down. Yeah, and for the golden pothos, they do have, let's see if I can find a leaf here. So they do have more of a yellow golden color of the green on their leaf. And once again, they all have these sort of nodes. That's where your roots are gonna come out. Silver Ann is the next one. A little bit of a smaller leaf, kind of the size of the Mandula, but it has the silver shimmer speckles in it. And once again, this one was just a small cutting. They have the aerial root that comes out of the node there. So I'll show you how I cut these up and get them ready for water. And another one is the Scindapsus pictus exotica. So this one here has much larger leaves and they have a little bit of a curve to them. And the leaves also on this one are quite thick, almost like a rubbery texture. I do find that they hold their water a lot better. And I'm just noticing now how beautiful the back of the leaves are. I don't know if my camera will focus, but looking closely at it in the light, it has almost like a shimmer. So I cut this off and sort of trimmed it back to try and encourage new growth up top, because where you cut, it'll stop growing. And then further up the stem, either shortly before where you cut or up a little ways, that's where it's gonna start pushing out new growth. Next one is the Philodendron. So for Philodendron, I did the cardatum, which is green heartleaf. They have usually bigger leaves than this. They can get quite large, but nice, easy to propagate plant. With philodendrons, I find they are much slower than pothos. The fastest one that I've had is probably the neon pothos, putting out a little root, a little aerial root there. And another is the Philodendron micans. So these have the beautiful, like soft, velvety leaves. This one here puts out lots of little roots out of its nodes. So that's another one that I'll be propagating today. So another one for propagating is the Monstera Deliciosa. This one, I did just repot it in a larger terracotta pot. It was in a smaller, I think it was a 9-inch or 10-inch, and now it's in a 12-inch. Usually you can let them stay quite root bound for a while, and if you think it needs repotting, usually you can get around to it later. They're usually okay with being root bound. This one, I was sort of having troubles trying to keep watering it, and no matter how much I watered it, it seemed like water was always coming out of the drainage holes right away, and I was watering it slowly, trying to bottom water it even, and eventually I lifted it out of its pot and realized that it was probably 90% roots. So down here is where they have sort of attached themselves. You can see this long root going down, a couple other ones here on the back. So I want to let this crawl up its moss pole. It seems, for me, I found that the higher up it goes, the larger the leaves get. They were getting quite large, but as you can see, it's already sort of reached the top. So I want to stop that and get it to push out some new growth further down, as well as make some room for all these other branches and vines that are crawling up. So with cutting, you want to make sure that you're doing it with clean scissors. These ones here, I just alcohol swab each time I use them, in case there's any pests or any bacteria on it. It can cause root rot during your propagations. So you can see here, I've got a little bit to work with before it is attached to the pole. So I'll leave that alone further down, but what I want to do is get some of these larger leaves. So I'm going to cut right here, straight across. So I have little bit of the aerial root and a little bit of the stem, but I left a little chunk of the stem here so that can callus over and then push out some new growth. So before I get too carried away, I wanted to show you, this is the Mandula Pothos, and this is the Enjoy. So the leaves on the Mandula are a lot more of a oval shaped leaf. This is one of the newer leaves here. And they're a lot more, I'd say a brighter white, it seems, but they come out fairly similar. And then this is more of a speckled white, and then this one here has more of a blotchy cream colored leaf. So these are those Philodendron Brazil cuttings that I put in soil, and I had them in water and put them into soil, put them in my little humidity blocks, my plant ICB, plant intensive care box. And yeah, it seems to be doing well. It made the transition fairly well, but as you can see, one leaf casualty. So that one I'm just gonna pull straight out. And I still have 6 leaves left in there. So pretty healthy. They all seem to be doing just fine. This is sort of one of the more aeroid mixes, so it's probably 40% coco coir, 30% perlite, 20% orchid bark, and then 10% worm castings. So they all seem to really like this. I have a lot of philodendrons, like Philodendron Salome. I just repotted it a couple weeks ago and put it in there, and it's loving it, putting out lots of new growth. This one is a Syngonium Maria, I believe, a bronze one. So I have it here in water. Yeah, it's got some air bubbles on the roots, so I'll show you this. So this one here, it's got the little sort of roots poking out. This will be probably a week, maybe 2 weeks, and it'll have roots and be ready to be placed in soil. I am also doing a little bit of an experiment. I have 2 different cuttings from the same plant, put in just tap water, and in their water I added, so this is a Cola brand plant food that I got from Okanagan Urban Jungle. This is sort of a mild plant food, I guess you could say, but it's all natural. And the other one, I added a little bit of rooting hormone from Technoflora that I got off Amazon. So this one here is actually a gel, really good for soil propagating, but I wanted to give it a try here in water, so I'll see if any one of them's faster. And the other one that I had just shown is just in straight water. So another plant that's pretty easy to propagate that I've done lots of before is the Hedrohelix. I like these. They're kind of like your typical countertop plants. One thing you can do with these is they have, when you touch sort of the vine, you can feel little sort of sharp nodes, and that's where they put out their fine hair-like roots. So this one here I just have in a cover pot. Could probably be repotted, but they don't mind being a little bit more root bound. So I cut this end off here, and I did that because it's pushing out some new growth right there. So if I stunt its growth here, it's already starting to grow out on the side there. But where I took the cutting, there's a little tiny, I don't know if my camera will be able to focus on it, but there's a little tiny node sticking out there, and almost each leaf has one. So what you can actually do, I'll show this more in the video, but you can cut each stem and you can put them in water and they'll root, and then eventually they'll put out new growth. You can put them directly in soil, but once again, I prefer the water propagation method, and that seems to work really well for even those. Another one that's super easy to propagate is the string of pearls. This one I took just off of one of our bedroom plants. They are quite easy to propagate, but I always recommend soil propagating these ones because they are a succulent, a senecio, They don't like to be stuck in water, I have found, and my cuttings usually don't do so well in water. But when you just have a long strand, just try and get a good amount, and I'll see if I can show it here. It's kind of hard to see, but there is a, I'll see if I can show it here, but there is a few aerial roots, the little nodes that are just sticking out. So those can be cut at each spot and then just placed in soil or just on top of soil, and then just kind of push them in, water them a little bit, and let that soil sort of splash up and cover those roots. And on to the last one that I wanted to touch on was the Ficus elastica. I also have a Ficus altissima. This one here I've done grown a plant actually, and it's surviving just with a leaf cutting. And I did that just through water propagation. Actually, one of the leaves knocked off while I was moving this plant, and I stuck it in water, and it took a while, probably a month. And before I knew it though, it had some roots. I stuck it in soil, and it hasn't pushed out new growth, but its roots have filled out its little pot. But with a lot of ficus, you have to be careful because they'll sort of weep a white sap, and that can be irritating for skin, eyes, and just want to be cautious of it. So I usually carry a bucket with me. So I am going to cut this one, just this little leaf here, get close to the stem, but not cutting the stem. And yeah, and as you can see, there's that white sap coming out. So right away, I'm gonna put that in the bucket, and eventually that will callus over. Another one here is the Ficus elastica tiki. So this is the variegated form, putting out a new leaf, but it has a little baby plant on the bottom here. It's got some roots, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna drive my thumbnail in there and try and divide that off of the parent plant. Usually you do this when you're repotting. Oh, yeah, it's in there. Oh, and it's got some roots. Perfect. So I'm just gonna carefully, you can see that I did cut it off of the stem. I'm just gonna pull this up, if I can do that without damaging the plant. There we go. Look at that. And I'll give this a little rinse off there just to kind of clean it up a bit. And then I'll put this in soil. But this one's kind of tricky to move out from behind the couch. But this is the Burgundy Ficus elastica. So I'll be doing a cutting from this one to propagate. Once again, got my little bucket here because this one is sort of a thicker stem, so it will leak a little bit more of that white sap. So I'm just gonna come down here, and usually you could use larger scissors. And I'm just gonna cut. And you can see it's like dripping that sap, so try and be careful with that. But yeah, some nice big healthy leaves, and not a very developed leaf in there, leaflet yet. So off the top of the stem here, it is gonna weep a lot of that white sap as well. I can see it dripping down. So just be careful with that. You can get a tissue or Kleenex or paper towel and just try and dap it off a little bit. So this is where I have those little vials that are filled with water in the window. Once again, bright light, but it's not direct sunlight. This one here I think is ready to propagate. This is the Berry Illusion. I got this as a whole bunch of cuttings from a friend and stuck it in some soil earlier this summer, and it's already quite root bound, so we'll need to be repotted. But you can see there we have some nodes, some aerial roots coming out, and same with on this side. It's a little bit easier to see that guy sticking out. So what I'm going to do is just get my clean scissors and come in here and cut so that it's just below that root. And you might have to bend a few leaves to kind of get them out of the way to try and get the right angle. So with these leaves here, you can see that for video's sake, I wanted to cut it, but it does have an aerial root, and these leaves were just stuck on the side, so when I cut, they fell off. So these ones here, these won't propagate. You can just put those in your compost pile. So for starting off, let's do the Enjoy pothos. So like I said before, you have those little aerial roots or nodes, so I can trim this back a little bit. Just cut that off. And this part here, I could cut in the middle, but I like to keep it short. And that's all you need. You have just a little aerial root and a leaf, and eventually that will push out new growth. So for all of these, that's kind of what I will do. I will disregard this stem and get a leaf. When it comes to the end, I haven't had great success in propagating these, the very end of the vine. So with this little leaf, it might die off. So usually what I'll do with this one is I'll cut that right off and then try for this one here. So that's it for this pile of the Pothos Enjoy. For the Monstera Deliciosa, it's the same thing with the roots. So what I'm going to do, because this is a larger stem, larger leaves, I'm going to try and get down a little bit further and then just cut that off. Usually I try and cut straight across to reduce the surface area that's exposed. And that just helps it callus over a little bit quicker and less water loss. But for that angle, you know, it's kind of hard to reach, so that's okay. Once again, cutting off this excess stem, leaving the node. There you have it. The Senecios, these ones here, I might just cut a little bit. You just cut in between right before that node, cut off a bead or two, and then this part can be stuck right in soil. You can see it's got a couple of little nodes sticking out there, so this can just go straight in soil. And some of the beads that you've cut off, you can actually stick them in soil. Sometimes they'll root, sometimes not. They're a little bit harder. I've had a little bit of luck with them, but usually what I do is I'll stick all my cuttings in at the top, and you just kind of lay them down in a circle, let them sort of root. And then the little beads that have fallen off or that you've cut off, you can just put on the soil surface. Okay, so I did manage to cut up all those golden pothos cuttings. I put the Ficus elastica tiki in its soil and watered it down. So I'll have that in a bright spot, as well as the Syngonium cutting. I have that in just some water. The Ficus Altisma leaf cutting in water as well. I have the Ficus Elastica stem cutting in water. I didn't want to fill it up too much to fully submerge that leaf, but it's something you have to really be watchful of, is if this dries out and the water level gets too low, it might prevent your cutting from rooting. And then I have all my other leaf cuttings. So I'll get those up in the propagation station. So what you can do with your Hedrohelix, these little ivy plants, is you can just stick them just in soil, just inside, like so, just underneath the soil surface, and you can hang them over the edge of the pot if it's easier. And how I like to do it is I like to water around the pot nice and slowly. You'll see the soil start to sink in. Just make sure that they're just submerged. Like that. Just submerged. So you can see with the aerial root just sticking out, just stick that straight in the soil. And then I like to wrap mine around in the inside of the pot, because there's other aerial roots that can be pushed out. Now the next thing is, if you have a bunch of like pothos cuttings like I still have here, and some of them they're like end cuttings and they wouldn't quite fit. Let's see if I can find one here. Some of them are like end cuttings like this, where it is pushing out new growth, it has a root, but not the greatest success I've found for water propagating this. So it's got some roots coming out here. So for this, I'm just gonna stick straight in soil. I'm gonna fill this pot up. Put as many in as you can or as you want. I find pothos plants are the easiest to propagate, and I always suggest, if you're new to houseplants and you're unsure about propagating, if you have a pothos, I would start there, because if it's unsuccessful, they rebound really quickly. And I propagate my plants, my pothos, a couple times a year. So what I did is I just took the Senecio string of pearls, put them on the soil surface, just stuck them in a little bit, gave them a little bit of water. Now I'll put this in a bright spot. I did the same for the Hedrohelix, so I put this in some soil and just watered around. Because these ones haven't rooted yet, you want to make sure that the soil for the next couple weeks or a week or so stays quite damp. These are a whole bunch of pothos cuttings. You just stick them just below the soil surface. And sometimes, like this pot, there's quite a few in there, so they don't all stick in there. Like this one's already come out. So all you do is you can try and work it back into the soil if you find a free spot. Sometimes a chopstick works well to try and get that in there. And then you just water it. You might have to work the soil around a little bit to try and get all the aerial nodes where the roots are going to come out, get those covered up with some soil. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear from you to see what other plants you'd like to see propagated, or any methods that have worked for you in the past or that didn't. Feel free to comment down below, as well as if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching. My name is Kelly. This is Houseplants Gone Wild.